You know what I mean? I don't know what it is, but people have been stressed, and I don't blame them. This is a stressful period of time, but I do have to say, take a minute. If you are in a bad situation, take a minute and just try to think about how that other person might be feeling.
We travel initially to lose ourselves, and we travel next to find ourselves by Pico Lyer. Before we get started with today's video, I just want to say thank you everybody who's been subscribing to me this far, and I want to say a couple thank yous before we get started with this research project. I want to first say thank you to my honors mentor, Professor Srauy, who has been with me through this whole journey of exploration and trying to do self-discovery with me. A big shout out and a big thank you to all that he's done for me. Next, I'd like to thank the Honors College Board for really putting a pep in my step when it comes to graduating this year and allowing me to research this project. It's been absolute gem. It's been amazing to do. And next, I'd like to thank my friends for allowing me to travel and be part of their culture. And lastly, I'd like to thank my parents for always being there and supporting me on this journey. So let's get started. It's called Wanderlust. It's a strong desire to travel. And I've had this since the beginning. To tell you and to understand the research behind Wanderlust, it first starts with me. It started when I was 19. I finally moved out of my house and moved to Chicago because I got accepted at a university there. After being in a small town for so long, I figured Chicago was the perfect place for me to create a new identity for myself. I had so many dreams and ambitions. I started modeling, I started acting, I did everything that I wanted to do. And one of my favorite things was that I even started my own podcast. I started a mental health podcast for college students where I talked about just about everything I wanted to. I knew I could really recreate myself being there. When the pandemic hit, it really took a toll on my time there, and I had to move out into an apartment with a couple roommates. Moving into that small apartment made me really miss traveling. I felt like I had traveled so much in downtown Chicago, and being cooped up in my little apartment really just made me want to go out and do something more. When it came to me creating an identity for myself, I knew that one of the biggest things I had always wanted to do was travel, but my university wouldn't let me travel to the places I wanted to go, so I had to take matters into my own hands. I had always wanted to go study abroad, and I didn't really care where I went, but I always kind of longed to go to Japan. It was one of my biggest dreams, and one of the things I've always wanted to do since I was a little kid. So when I went to my university and told them that I wanted to go to Japan, they said we didn't have any study abroad opportunities. So that really put a damper on things. So I ended up packing up my Chicago apartment. I transferred schools back home to Michigan, and I applied for the study abroad program at my university in Oakland. And they approved me. I got my visa, I got my paperwork, and they gave me a full ride to study abroad in Japan for 6 months. So with that, all I had to do was start getting ready to go. Getting ready to move to a whole different country wasn't easy, but I think everybody was excited for me.
Toast to Nina. We're hoping and praying for safe travels and keep doing great things. And we're all proud of you. We love you. See you, Nina.
Thanks, Dad. I'm really gonna miss all you guys. Around early September, I had found out I was approved for my 6-month visa to study abroad as a student. So on September 7th, I left, and I was on my way to Japan. I never had flown out of the country before, let alone had flown out by myself, but I was really excited. I was really about to live out my lifelong dream and make it a complete reality. On September 8th, I arrived in the middle of the night in Japan, and I was unpacking in my little dorm room. I was so excited, and I wanted to document every single little detail, so I started filming. I filmed pretty much everything. This was my first real day in Japan, so I wanted to remember every single detail, from the hallway that I walked into, to the kitchens, to the bathrooms. Literally every single detail was something I didn't want to forget. And I wanted to start uploading my journey as well. I wanted other people to see the journey that I was going through. Me, as a single young Black college student who barely knew any Japanese, really went to Japan. I think my first morning was a little rough because I was exhausted, but I think I was more excited really than anything else. It's funny because I still remember that first day. The weather was a lot warmer than it was in the United States, but I remember I wore a long blue skirt, I had my umbrella in hand because it was raining, and I walked around my whole campus, thinking about all of the adventures I was about to have. After that first day, things started moving pretty fast after that. I started getting invested in the culture pretty quickly. As a communications major and a Japanese culture minor, one of the biggest things I wanted to learn in Japan was understanding their culture. I made sure that I invested every waking moment into talking to Japanese people, understanding the way things were done in Japan, traveling, buying groceries, having fun, and just understanding their culture in ways that I wouldn't have been able to do in America. But of course, I was still a student. I had classes just like everybody else did. The first couple weeks of being there was kind of difficult, only because of my little knowledge of Japanese, but I would say that these were actually some of the best moments where I could really explore. I realized that not knowing a lot made me realize that I could learn a lot. I went into everything as open-minded as I could be, which made me want to learn even more. But some of the best times I had was really with all of my new friends. They were the people who let me into their culture and let me understand everything that they did. Having them around really made the experience what it was. My friends from home would ask me, "You're not afraid to go out there and meet a bunch of people from a different culture?" But no, I was just excited. School definitely became difficult. Classes would start around 9 a.m. in the morning, and sometimes I wouldn't get back to my dorm room until about 6 p.m. in the afternoon, and by then I was exhausted and still had homework to do. But I never really complained. I actually really liked it, and times when I wasn't at school gave me the opportunity to travel around Japan, going to Kyoto, Osaka, Tokyo. I wouldn't change any of those experiences for the world. I think the craziest part about all of this is that at one point it really felt like I belonged. Maybe I wasn't American, but I felt accepted in this society where you wouldn't expect me to feel accepted, but I was. Every day I was learning more and more Japanese, and I was so happy. But I think things began to change when I realized I was going to be heading home soon. I felt like I had opened this new chapter for it to end so soon. I think this is where the beginning stages of my confusion really started. It's like I made myself a home there. Really felt like nothing could go wrong. And yeah, I had my up moments and even my down moments at times, but I knew it wasn't going to last forever. I think some of my favorite parts were some of the cultural elements that I didn't really do in America. For instance, I wasn't a very big cook back at home, but I've been cooking all the time in Japan, and I really like it actually. Maybe I'll start cooking back at home. But I realized that my months were slowly turning into weeks, and that I would soon have to say goodbye to all of my friends, and the little community I had built for myself was going to be ending. So in my last few days that I was in Japan, I tried to experience as much Japanese culture as I possibly could in my short amount of time before I had to leave. In a span of just a couple months, my Japanese grew so much stronger, and my love for the culture grew even more. I think my most proudest moment was when I gave the ending ceremony speech for the whole study abroad program.
Konnichiwa, minasan. 私はニナベリアンです. I'm honored to be given this opportunity to be here with you all today. On my first day, I came to Japan knowing very little Japanese. でも、今はたくさんの日本語を話せるようになりました. I've always dreamed of coming to Japan ever since I was a kid. I used to sit in my room for hours researching how I could get there. Then, when the day came, I felt underprepared. Like for many, the first days were challenging. Meeting new friends, going from online programs to an in-person school setting, and immersing myself into Japanese culture. I remember sitting in those seats at the entrance ceremony, thinking, how am I going to survive if I can't understand a word that they're saying? Those days were tough. But as time went by, those days became weeks, and those challenges started becoming accomplishments. Little things I was confused about started to make sense. Sentences I couldn't understand were starting to be understood. I think back now and I wish I could tell myself that those days are going to get better.
I was proud of myself to see how far I've come in such a short time. I think everyone really liked it. And the best part was when I had to reflect on the journey. Packing to go home felt a little difficult, but I think I'm leaving with more respect for the culture, feeling a little more open-minded about my experience. It really left me feeling like I wanted to travel more. I was actually really sad to leave. My sadness stemmed from a lot of things. Maybe it was the fact that I was leaving this beautiful place that I had made all these relationships and friends. Another part stemmed from me having to go back home and not really knowing what I was going to be getting into when I got back. Another part was actually knowing what I would be doing when I got back home, and I knew it had nothing to do with where I was now. I was getting ready to close a chapter on my life that I had opened, but I didn't really realize what it would do for me. I didn't really know where it would go from here, but I knew that things were going to be a lot different when I got back. My first few days back in America felt a bit miserable. Maybe more on the lines of awful, actually. Yes, I was jet-lagged, but I really think it was more than that. You see, I had to assimilate back into American society, which honestly felt kind of weird. I was used to my onigiri that I had every morning for breakfast, and now I'm having fast food. Granted, I did miss American food a bit, but things still felt odd. Yes, I had some packages coming in from Japan, and I went back to American school, but things still felt a bit weird. I was still learning Japanese, but I was learning it online. There were so many things that I had to relearn that I didn't realize I actually forgot. I was used to wearing masks in Japan, speaking in a soft tone of voice, taking my shoes off when I got in the house. But for a while, it felt like I was learning how to be American again. Sometimes I would even have to catch myself at grocery stores when I started speaking Japanese instead of English. And I don't think the weather was helping my situation either. This is the part that really started to make me more confused. You'd think that after all of that traveling, it would be over. I'd be content. I'd be done. But that's not what happened. You see, I traveled before I had even really traveled. You see, I was a small town girl living in my small town. And when I moved out into Chicago, I didn't realize that was the start of my journey. And when I went to Japan, it made my journey even bigger. So when I returned, you'd think it might be over. But really, I think that was just the beginning, because I realized that being back here wasn't going to complete my journey. And that made me really understand the definition of wanderlust. I had this desire to keep going. I didn't want it to stop here. So I didn't. I kept going. I went on more journeys. So like I said, I left, but not forever. I just decided that I'd go back to Chicago and try to recover some of what I lost here in America. I wasn't caught up on any recent news in America, so I thought I'd book a couple modeling jobs and visit some friends. I just did things like how I used to do before I left, but it felt different. It honestly felt odd. I started thinking about how immigrants first felt coming into America, and I could imagine that the feeling probably was weird. So I didn't stop there. I actually booked a couple other trips, all while still going back to do schoolwork. It felt like every weekend I was going on a new trip, trying to discover myself and find myself in different areas. I honestly felt pretty lucky because I'm sure not many other people had this ability to just travel whenever they'd like. But it kind of felt like I had a calling to do this, like something was telling me that you need to go out there and you need to discover. I just didn't feel right anywhere in the world of just staying there, and it felt like traveling really was helping me understand that. But all of this actually came to an end after I booked a trip to San Francisco. You see, maybe I was searching for something, but I think this trip gave me that conclusion. San Francisco was one of the first places that Japanese people had immigrated to in the United States. So in this area of town, there was a section called Japantown, where people would speak Japanese, eat Japanese food, and enjoy Japanese culture. Yet they were here in America. I found some of my favorite snacks and my favorite foods and some of my favorite activities all here in San Francisco. And then I started to think, started to realize something about America. I started to realize how lucky I was to have experienced so many different cultures. I think traveling led me to rethink my identity and try to emulate a new one. In a way that makes me a bit more confused. But does it make me want to travel more? Yeah, it does. But what will become of it? I'm not sure. Winter became spring. and my graduation day for college is right around the corner. It's been a couple months since I've returned from Japan, but it's probably only been about a week since my last trip. I'm still traveling, and I'm still discovering myself. I realized that I had experienced some things that some students at my age may never have been able to experience. But because of that, I realized that travel has an ability to just open our minds, make us see cultures in a different light, understand things we never would have been able to understand, and overall helps us understand identity. It's the ability to say, I'm more than just a college student. Do I believe traveling can help solve all of identity issues? Yes and no. I think traveling can help, but I don't think it will solve everything. Rather, I think that traveling can question identity, and in some cases, it can help you find a new one. I think it depends on the person and how they incorporate their traveling into their identity. For me, I decided to take the experiences I had through traveling and share it with the world. I want to advocate for people to travel and help them find safe and affordable ways for people to travel the world and how it can shape who you want to become by learning about other people. I've also started vlogging my travels so other people can share this weird question of identity with me. I'd appreciate a like and a sub to the channel if you got this far. My time in college is finally ending, but I want to know that I at least made an impact by showing people what I've done. But I don't think this is the end of my journey. And I honestly think that I really opened up a new chapter by traveling. I even decided to give speeches to tell people to go out to different cultures and see how it makes you feel.
That I could create a perfect thesis about how college students feel when they're alienated and how traveling kind of closes that gap on trying to understand yourself a little better.
And through all of this, I still travel, of course. I still travel all the time, whenever I really get the chance. To be honest with you, I don't think this really has a clear conclusion. But that's why I wanted to study this. If college students feel alienated, does travel help solve that identity gap? With myself being a perfect test subject for this research, I will say that I have formed an identity from travel, but it's something that I never thought I would have formed. I guess in the end, I did form some sort of identity. I'm becoming, well, a traveler. Now, I won't say that this is the case for everybody, but I will say that wanderlust can shape our identities. It can help us think of identities, and I guess help us create new ones. I ask that you continue to follow my journey as I continue to study wanderlust and how to find self-identity. Do I have a logical conclusion right now? Sort of, but I think time will tell as I continue traveling the world. Follow me on the journey of wanderlust. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. The end.